oral report portion of my project, I wanted to focus in onto the Salem Witchcraft Trials, which I did the research part for Essay 1. There was a huge hysteria of witchcraft worries or accusations in Europe just before it kind of jumped over the pond into America. The hysteria really started in February of 1692 when accusations started to roll out. It first started with some girls, Abigail Williams, Elizabeth Parris, and kind of snowballed, and they started accusing different people. Some of these people were just people that they didn't like. Kind of think of them as the mean girls, just accusing out of spite. Some of the accused had problems with land, and it would have been a little convenient if the accused was out of the way so that the other person, the accuser, could gain control or own the land that was in question. And one person, an older man, was accused because the faction that he was in church was against the Putnam faction in the same church, and one of the Putnam family members accused him of being a witch. So a lot of the accusations seem to be a little on the something to gain side, that the accuser would be gaining something. But with 100 accusations, there was a lot of just snowball effect. And one of the things that would happen was when they were brought to trial, the courtroom would be filled to full capacity. People liked to watch and to see what was going on, and one or two people might start having a fit. They were usually the accusers or some of these girls that were in the courtroom, and these fits would be throwing themselves on the ground and writhing, screaming, screeching, claiming to see the dark man or the black man, which was supposed to be a black personage, presumably the devil, or the accused would show themselves in visions or dreams as well, according to the accusers. So in this time period, in these 8 months when the hysteria was going on, 19 people were accused and brought to trial. That's out of the 100 that were actually accused. And during trial, there was something called spectral evidence, which I thought was pretty fascinating, but it kind of made sense for that day and age where your word meant something and people were generally honest. So what spectral evidence was it was a form of evidence based on witnesses' dreams or visions. So it was basically a hearsay, a he said, she said type thing between the accuser and the accused on what happened or what didn't happen. So the 19 were found guilty and they were hung in the gallows. And their age ranges were from young 20s to the elderly. There was one woman that was well into her 70s that was accused and hung. Now, one of the men that was accused, and because of the spectral evidence that he knew they had against him, he refused to go to trial. And in doing so, instead of being hung, they pressed him to death. And this was the only known occurrence of this even in the state, let alone during the witchcraft trials. But what they would do is they put a plank over him, and he was in his 80s. And they would put rocks and stones onto this plank until it basically suffocated him to death. And he actually was accused and died a short time after his wife was accused and hung. During the trials, Tituba, which was a servant to the Paris household at the time, was accused of being a witch. And she confessed to practicing witchcraft, which by all means she kind of, what the definition of witchcraft is, what she communed with the dead, she did spells, she worked with herbals, medicine, and it was what you would think of as a witch. So she confessed, and in doing so, she actually was imprisoned. They didn't worry about executing her. When somebody was accused, and they would go to court, just before they would go to these witch exams, and they'd have women look for witches' teats somewhere on the woman's body or the man's body, and it would be a mole or a birthmark or just something that looked out of place. And they believed that these were places on the witch where they would feed imps or the devil and in return receive like power or magic. Um, one example of this was Rebecca Nurse, who was accused, and she had an odd looking fold of skin near her groin. Now, Rebecca Nurse was 71 years old and had 10 children, so her body wasn't going to be smooth and perfect. And they didn't take any of that into account, and she was one of the 19 that was hung. I found the witch trials extremely interesting. I still can't fathom how people believed this and allowed it to go on, but it was part of history and it was something that hopefully we'll learn from, and it's actually really fascinating to research. And that concludes my oral report. Thank you.